Welcome to the Singer's Guide to Vowels. So in our first episode, there was a lot of theory. We talked an awful lot about how we can describe vowels as being open or closed, as being front or back vowels, and how that can affect the spaces that the sound has to vibrate in on its way out of our body. So today we want to get into the nitty-gritty of it. And so today we're going to be looking at front vowels. We're going to categorize our front vowels as moving from most open to most closed. And I'm going to use examples of vowels that I tend to use in my teaching and in the exercises that we use to help you build your voice. There are lots of other vowel sounds out there. And remember, when I talk about vowels, I'm talking about the sound a vowel makes rather than particularly the name of that vowel as it's written down. So let's start with the most open of our front vowels, and that is ah. Say it with me. Ah. So we can feel our tongue is quite far forward in our mouth. That is what categorizes this as a front vowel. And this is quite an open vowel. As you can see, my mouth is quite wide open when I say it. Ah. And so because of that, we get more exposure to the hard palate, which makes this a great vowel for exploring the bottom part of our voice, but not particularly handy when we want to sing up high. Now, as a little side note here, this ah vowel is actually not one we use an awful lot in the UK. It's quite an American vowel. But because we sing an awful lot of American music, there is a good chance that you'll be singing an awful lot of that ah at times. And so we need to tackle this vowel and show you how to make it a little bit easier. So moving from ah, which is the most open vowel, the next one along from that, so we're closing it down a little bit, would be eh, as in bed, eh, eh. So ah, as in bat, if I were American, bat. The next one along is eh, as in bed. Now it's important to know that that's the next one along, because when you go to sing, if you are finding that you have a tricky note to sing and the vowel is ah, what we can do is we can make a little sneaky shift inwards. So we can substitute the ah vowel for an eh vowel instead. So instead of singing bad, we can change it to bed and sing bed. You see how it still kind of sounds like I was singing bad in an American accent, not in my accent. Don't forget, as I said in the last video, our accents are all about how we pronounce our vowel sounds. So, yeah. But if you're singing an ah and it's getting a little bit difficult, particularly up high, if we close it in a little bit, it makes it a little bit easier to get through into the next part of our voice. So, ah narrows into eh. The next vowel along in this sequence of front vowels would be I, as in bid. I'm going to bid on this. So if your song had the word bed in it, and that was becoming a bit of a struggle, maybe it's feeling a little tight and uncomfortable up high, if you close that vowel down to I, bid, you're going to find it a little bit easier perhaps. So instead of bed, we can close it down to bid. And again, we can still hear the word bed in that, and certainly in the context of a song in a whole line about, going to bed perhaps, we would understand that you were still singing bed, but we've just closed the vowel in enough that it allows you to shift into that higher part of your voice with more ease. So the next one along in this sequence from I, like bid, would be E, like bead, like a beaded necklace. Okay, so I, if you're getting a little stuck in the middle of your voice and it's getting a little bit tight, you might want to try narrowing it down to an E. So instead of bid, we might bead. Now again, our brains will interpret that as the right word, but it just stops us from getting stuck at in the lower part of our voice, because remember, the more open vowels give you more exposure to the hard palate, and in turn that makes it easier for you to stay in the lower part of your voice. But if you're trying to sing a high note, you don't want to stay in the lower part of your voice, you want it to start shifting, and so closing the vowel in will help you with that. So that's our main sequence of the most used vowels, shall I say, although there are more. So just to revise, we've got A as in bad, goes to E as in bed, which goes to I as in bid, which goes to E as in bead. And these are all front vowels because the tongue is sitting at the front of the mouth while we do these. Now there's one other front vowel that I just want to mention because it crops up quite a lot, and that is A. Now A is what we call a diphthong. A diphthong is a vowel that is essentially made up from two other vowels kind of joined together. So the A vowel, if I say that in slow motion, A, you can hear that it's got two different vowels joining together. A. This is closing from an to an E. A. And we use this vowel quite a lot. Anyone who's ever been given a nay exercise will be very familiar with that A vowel. Now A is actually very closed because it finishes on that E vowel, which was our most closed of the front vowels. So as the tongue comes up, A, and really kind of pushes up at the top of our mouth there, it creates the most, shall we say, restriction to the airflow. A. Now, generally speaking, my go-to to narrow an A vowel would be to borrow a little bit from our Irish friends across the pond and turn our A into E. Now, can you hear the difference in those two pronunciations? If I put it in the context of a word we might say more often. Day, D. Day, D. Can you hear how much more closed down the second one is, the slightly more Irish sounding one? So if you're in a song and you're getting a little stuck on the A sound, day, a little tight, go a little Irish, D. And you might find that a little bit easier to get through on those higher notes with. So understanding that these are all front vowels is important, because if you're trying to move a vowel from one place to another, if you're trying to open it up or close it down, it needs to stick within its same family of front vowels or its same family of back vowels. So you wouldn't necessarily want to substitute a front vowel for a back vowel in a song. It probably won't work as well as if you can just open and close it within that same kind of family of vowels. So watch out within your songs for these particular front vowels and pay close attention in particular to the notes where you feel like it's getting tight and uncomfortable at the top. If it's getting tight and uncomfortable at the top, figure out what the vowel is that you're singing and see if you can just nudge it one in and make life a little bit easier for you. But in turn, remember, if you're struggling to get any kind of sound and depth in the lower part of your voice, the more closed vowels probably aren't going to be particularly helpful in getting you into the bottom part of your voice. If you're trying to get more substance in the lower notes, you're probably going to find that a more open vowel will be your best friend. So it's a lot easier to sing lower on an ah than it is on an e. So it might be that you need to, rather than close down the vowel, you might find that you need to open up the vowel in order to make life easier for you. So we've looked at our front vowels. In the next episode, we're going to take a little look at our back vowels, and we're going to show you the same thing, how we can go from our most open to our most closed within that family of back vowels. Stay tuned.